Hi, my name is Dr. Jon Repole with Jacksonville Health and Wellness Center. Today we're talking about the adrenal glands and we're talking about adrenal fatigue. So the adrenal glands sit on top of our kidney and they produce lots of hormones. We're going to talk about two in particular. One of them is called cortisol, which is oftentimes referred to as the stress hormone, and DHEA, which is oftentimes referred to as the sex hormone, simply because from DHEA the body can produce the other sex hormones. You know, in the early part of our life, we're producing an enormous amount of sex hormone production that is coming from our sex organs. In guys, the testes, and women, the uterus and the ovaries. And it doesn't matter what type of stresses or abuses that we're putting on our body's still going to pump out these hormones to get us through puberty and so forth. But there's a tipping point. Around age 30, 40-ish, we begin to shift our sex hormone production over to the adrenal glands. They're now taking up a lot of the slack, and they're producing a lot more sex hormone production than the sex organs were when you were, say, 16 or 15 years old or 18 years old. But there's a catch, because if you envision that the adrenal glands use the same substrates or substances to make cortisol as they do DHEA, just imagine now, you're still abusing your body. And every time your body shifts now into stress physiology, meaning a production of cortisol, it's now at the expense of DHEA, which is the sex hormone. So you get a decrease along that pathway. So you can envision we have these substrates here that are used. One pathway can go towards cortisol and the other pathway can go towards DHEA. If we're in stress physiology, all the energy and production goes to cortisol at the expense of DHEA. And what happens between the ages of, say, 30 to 60, we have a whole host of symptoms that people come in with. Fatigue, loss of libido, a lot easier time increasing or holding on to body fat, and a very difficult time increasing muscle mass. We have problems with pain, sleep disturbances, and the list just keeps going on, depression and cognitive decline and so forth. And a lot of it has to do with this redistribution. We were the iron men or iron women in the beginning. We could do anything we wanted and our body was still going to spit out the sex hormones because it wasn't transferred over, the autonomy over to the adrenal glands yet. But as we got older, the shift occurred, and now every time we go into stress physiology, we are at the expense of sex hormone production, which creates all the symptoms that we just talked about. With adrenal fatigue in particularly, there's a very systematic way the body breaks down. So we're going to use the analogy here that all people know about, and that is the relationship between the pancreas and insulin. And I promise you'll know about this. So it breaks down, all endocrine glands break down in a very systematic way. And they break down through what's called the alarm, resistance, and then exhaustion stage. So you eat a cupcake and your body squirts out some sort of influx of sugar goes into the bloodstream. Your body puts out some insulin to take that sugar outside of the blood and bring it into the cells that need it. And all is fine. There's an alarm reaction that goes off that's completely appropriate, and then everything goes back to normal. But imagine eating that candy bar, that cupcake for now decades. It's like the body begins to become resistant. It's like, God, I keep putting out this insulin to get rid of the sugar from the blood, but every single day you're abusing the body, and the body becomes a little bit resistant towards taking in that sugar, the cells taking in that sugar, and the blood glucose begins to rise and stay elevated. Till finally you abuse, your sugar intake for 30, 40 years, and your pancreas shuts down, and that's a condition called diabetes. The adrenals do the same thing. You get a stress response, which is appropriate. It's an alarm reaction. In older times when you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, you needed to divert your energies and your physiology towards the extremities to run, increase your respiration, increase your heart rate, so that way you can run and do what's needed. And it was always at the expense of the digestive system and the sex hormone production, primarily because you didn't need it. You wanted to make sure that you survived. That's the alarm reaction, right? It's appropriate. Fast forward to today, right? You wake up in the morning, the alarm clock goes off, and you perceive that as a stress. You get in the car and there's traffic. That's perceived as a stress. You get out of your car into the supermarket. The person takes too long to take out the money from their wallet. That is perceived as a stress. And all day you've created these imaginary stressors, and you're increasing your production of cortisol. And it's slowly going up, and your body starts to get resistant again. So you go from alarm, now you go to resistance, until finally you do this for 30, 40 years, right? You're running on empty, basically, because of the diet that you have, the lack of exercise, the negative thoughts in your head, the monkey mind. You begin to fall into an exhaustion stage where the adrenals shut off, and we call that adrenal fatigue. And that's what creates that imbalance between the sex hormone production and, say, the stress hormone production. And then you get the symptoms that are associated with, which are really common symptoms that most people have. Okay, how do we diagnose this? You can't diagnose it in blood, because if you have fatigue, you have weight issues, you have loss of libido, you go to the doctor and they order the routine blood work and they say, listen, you're okay. Go home. You're normal. Everybody has these problems. They can't find it in your blood work. Adrenal disorders or dysfunctions can only be diagnosed through the saliva testing. It's called an adrenal stress index profile. And it's a collection of saliva throughout the day. And why? Primarily because you're wanting to see the rhythm of the adrenal glands throughout the day. Blood work is just a snapshot in time, so you're only going to get the one, if you've ever had your cortisol run on your blood work and it came back normal, but you really thought you had an adrenal issue, that's the reason, is because you need to see the rhythm throughout the day, and really the only way to do that is through the saliva testing at home. I mean, it would be really difficult to have somebody go to get their blood drawn every 4 or 5 times a day in order to kind of create that rhythm. So the saliva is a little bit more convenient. Saliva has another advantage, primarily because it's showing you what the body is utilizing, or the free fraction of the hormone. Once you get that information, then you begin to chip away at the adrenal disorders, the stress response, by creating a very sophisticated multidimensional treatment plan. If you want help with identification of what test would be the best test for you to get, call our office. We'll be happy to help you. And then more importantly, once we get the results, what do you do with the results, and how do you utilize them? That's definitely something that we can help you with. So if this sounds like something that you're suffering with, please call our office and let us know, and talk to us so we can find a way to help you. Thanks so much for listening.